Fanoop. Pete. All right, so this is round 3 of the Mox Qualifier. We're against Fanoop. Fanoop is kind of known for playing some suboptimal PO lists, is what I would call them. Things with Arcane Astrolabe and stuff like that. I talked about deck selection process earlier. If you want, you can go back and look at the Twitch VOD. I'm also going to put it on YouTube so you can watch the first video of the series, which I'll talk about what the tournament is, what the deck selection for this tournament was, what I thought other people would play, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I did go over that. Feel free to look over it later or now or whatever you want. Fanoop, I think typically is going to play some kind of blue deck, leaning towards the combo side of things. I put him on PO for this tournament, some kind of deck like that. And so PO actually not a super good matchup for this deck. Because Leyline's not very good against PO. That's one of the few decks that Leyline main isn't very good against. The good part is Spheres are quite good main. This hand, I think I mulligan. I don't like the double dead sphere, even though we have an Orborg. I do, and this hand's much, much better. This is a fantastic hand versus PO on the play. Having double sphere is really going to slow them down. And Spyglass is not very good against PO, so I just put that away. It's actually a really, really cool hand because you have exactly 7 mana. So if I go turn 1 Sphere, it resolves. Turn 2 Workshop Sphere, it resolves. And then on turn 3, I have 7 mana to pay for the 7 mana Golos, which is sweet. And it just so happens that the Sphere resolves. And I didn't find out until later why these Spheres were resolving. But I'll explain later, I think. And this is a fantastic draw. This enables us to go turn 3 Golos Thespian Stage, turn 4 2020. Mason asked, do you think some creature-based graveyard hate would be good? Wear Tear or Vigor is really good versus Cage Leyline. I mean, what kind of creature-based graveyard hate are you trying to do? If it's an artifact, it dies to Shattering Spree. And they're already going to bring in 4 Swords to Plowshares against you, so it's not really getting better. Like, enchantment-based graveyard hate is a pretty good call against Breach decks because they really have 2 outs in their deck currently. They can have much more. They can have plenty of outs in their deck if they choose to. It's just, do they choose to, right? So here I see Island Swamp. And now the only decks that play Island Swamp and Vintage are some Doomsday lists and DPS lists, but nothing triggers like my warning bells because I'm like, well, I could see Fanoop playing Island Swamp in their Astrolabe PO list, but then I didn't even realize that these are not snow-covered Island Swamp, so they can't play Astrolabes. So I should have realized this probably wasn't PO at this point, but I didn't. I didn't actually realize that. So I just continue on like it's PO. I play the Golos, I get the Thespian Stage, which is obviously fantastic. Next turn I can make a 20/20, and they have to do something about it. Here they take a Time Walk turn. I'm still feeling pretty good because I could still beat a Tinker. Demonic Tutor, I don't even know what gets Demonic Tutored for here. All I know is that I'm making a 20/20 on the end of their turn, and they have to be able to beat it. So, like, I thought theoretically, if I take a Thespian Stage off this Golos, you kind of think it's going to be a 20/20. So I theoretically thought this could be like Repeal or Chain of Vapor or something like that. I don't know what it actually ended up being. I think it just ended up being like a powerful spell that didn't net them an out. So we just make a 20/20 and kill them. So yeah, I still think I'm playing against PO, and we go into game 2. In game 2, I think we're against PO. So what I did was I probably just boarded in like 4 Mindbreak Trap. It took out a Tabernacle, and I took out 3 Sorcerer's Spyglasses, and I boarded in 4 Mindbreak Trap. That's what we did. Which turns out to be pretty good against any deck that plays Island Swamp, but this is an interesting game. And the reason this game's interesting is because I think I overthought something. We'll go over it when it happens, but I think I overthought something to a point where I could have lost because of it. So it's kind of an interesting thought exercise. So I see Soul Ring, makes sense. I'm gonna deploy a Sphere. I obviously value Workshop Sphere hands a lot higher against matchups like PO or Swamp Island Swamp decks. Here I get to deploy a Lodestone Golem, which is obviously insane. Opponent is going to cast like Brainstorm in response or something like that, and then Mystical in response. So here I'm assuming that opponent is going to go Vampiric for Tinker of Blightsteel. And I'm actually not. I'm actually okay with that. And the reason I'm okay with that is because I can Mirage Mirror my own Blight to make my own Blightsteel. Or I can make a 20/20 and do blocking things. And so that is what happens here. And then we're going to go over what I did and what I think I should have done. So 2020, Blightsteel Colossus comes into play, and I draw Mana Crypt. Now, here's where things get interesting. I have a couple options. I can go Mana Crypt, Dark Depths, make a 20/20 right now. I can just play a Mirage Mirror off of like Mana Crypt or Orborg. Play a Mirage Mirror and have the ability to make a Blightsteel Colossus. That's also good. And so what I do is I think about all the ways I can lose, right? And I think my opponent, at this point, I'm still an idiot. I think my opponent is on PO. It ends up that they're on DPS, but they're pretty similar decks. And so the thing that I'm most worried about when I'm thinking my opponent's on PO, is Hurkyl's Recall. And Hurkyl's Recall is quite good against me exactly right now, and a lot of other times, but exactly right now because it means that depending on how I block, they can bounce on my artifacts and hit me with trampling damage. And so my concern was if I do Mirage Mirror to make a Blightsteel Colossus and block, if I turn my thing into a Blightsteel Colossus, or if they have at any point have a Hurkyl's Recall, they can bounce my Blightsteel or my Mirage Mirror, and then they would kill me with trampling damage. And so I was like super worried about Hurkyl's Recall, and so I was trying to figure out how I could play this line out in a way that plays around Hurkyl's Recall. And so I'll show you guys how I did it, and then we'll show you what ends up happening. So what I do is I play my Mana Crypt, +1 mana. I play my Mirage Mirror, and then I play my Dark Depths, and I make a 20/20. And so what this does is it gives me a 20/20 blocker for Blightsteel Colossus that doesn't get Hurkyl's Recall. And so so here opponent attacks in, and I have two choices, right? I can chump block with my Lodestone Golem and kill them with a 20/20. However, if they have Hurkyl's Recall, they Hurkyl's Recall me, throw the Lodestone Golem back into my hand, hit me for 11 impact, and I die. And I'm thinking my opponent's on PO. I'm thinking they have 4 Hurkyl's Recalls in their deck. It turns out they're on DPS and they only have 3 Hurkyl's Recalls in their deck, but it's still like an interesting point. And so the other line I can do is I can block with this Merit Lage, make a 20, block all the infect damage. This becomes a 9/9. I can't kill them on the swing back. I can only deal 14. But I have another Mirage Mirror. And so my line of thinking was, well, let's try to play around Hurkyl's Recall. Let's do our best to play around we can't really ever beat a repeal here. We can technically beat like a repeal by blocking with like both of them. Or like a Chain of Vapor. Well, we can always beat a Chain of Vapor by just bouncing their Blightsteel, but we can't really beat a repeal on our Merit Lodge. So I didn't even bother thinking about that. I'm just thinking about how can I play around Hurkyl's Recall. And so what I did is I'm going to block with this Merit Lage. So I take no infect damage, and I make my Merit Lage a 9/9. And then I play another Mirage Mirror. DPS is Dark Petition Storm. So it's a Tendrils of Agony Storm deck, but it's also just kind of like a Tinker Bola Citadel deck. And so this is where I basically made a mistake in going with this line of thinking and trying to play around Hurkyl's Recall. I don't think it's wrong to think of ways to try to play around Hurkyl's Recall, but I didn't think it all the way through. And the reason I didn't think it all the way through is, all right, theoretically, I block here, right? I play a Mirage Mirror. I attack, put them down to 2, and then on their turn, I Mirage Mirror my Merit Lage to make a 20/20 and block again. And then on my upkeep, it becomes a Mirage Mirror, and I make it a Lodestone Golem and attack and win. the problem with that is I just played into Hurkyl's Recall, because at the end of the line, I still have to turn my Mirage Mirror into a Lodestone Golem and attack. In which case, they will Hurkyl's Recall me. And maybe I don't lose on the spot because I can, like, play creatures post-combat or something, but it doesn't play around Hurkyl's Recall, which is the whole point of this entire line. And so what really happens is I give opponent an extra draw step to find a way out. And I think it was a good thought, which I think I can beat Hurkyl's Recall, but in the end, I actually just couldn't beat Hurkyl's Recall. So what happens is I attack, put them to 2. I play my Mirage Mirror. Another great part about this is if they have Hurkyl's Recall right now. So I'm like thinking through this. If I go to their turn, right, and if they have Hurkyl's Recall, if I activated my Mirage Mirror targeting my Merit Lage, they could Hurkyl's Recall me. However, I have 2 activations of Mirage Mirror, so basically my gameplay up to this point isn't beaten by Hurkyl's Recall. So I can actually Mirage Mirror my Merit Lage, make a 20/20. If they have a Hurkyl's Recall, I can do it again in response and still have a 20/20. The problem becomes if I go to my next turn, they can still Hurkyl's Recall my attackers, but whatever. Now I shouldn't have done this in upkeep. I should have done this in my attacking phase, so I didn't have to do it, but so opponent basically just goes for like the YOLO Time Twister to try to figure out a way out of this. And they don't actually have a way out of this. So they play a bunch of things and none of the things matter. And then we go to my turn. And then my Mirage Mirror. I wonder if my Mirage Mirror would have had infect counters. Oh, but then I would have killed them with this Lodestone Golem, so it doesn't matter. No, that doesn't beat. So then like they go for the YOLO Twister to try to find a way out. They don't have it. I can just Mirage Mirror onto my Lodestone Golem and attack with 2 attackers and kill my opponent. In the end, if they don't Twister here and they have Hurkyl's Recall, they can wait until this point and Hurkyl's Recall me, and then I have to replay everything. It ends up being like a pretty decent replay. Like I can still replay Lodestone and like Golos probably, but it's kind of weird. And so Sanctum, your line doesn't work because if I turn it into a Blightsteel and that resolves, then they just Hurkyl's Recall my Blightsteel and I lose. They don't have to do it right away because Blightsteel is an artifact, so it doesn't actually work. And you ask, what if I upkeep Copy a Sphere so it's harder? Well, then I can't attack, right? If I had upkeep Copy a Sphere there, then they would have attacked with Blightsteel and killed me. I have to block this Blightsteel every turn. And I didn't want to block with Lodestone because I didn't want to get Hurkyl's Recalled. So in the end, I have 2 activations, but the Magic Mirror doesn't give you activations after you've already changed into something. That's not true. It's not true that they didn't have Hurkyl's they could still have had Hurkyl's Recall up to this point. Yeah, the mirror does not retain the ability to activate them, so you can't like switch around all the time. You have to pick one thing for one whole turn. Yeah, I could have turned it into a Blightsteel, sure. No, I'm not running Time Vault. I don't like it. I've already went over this. You were here for when I went over this. So I don't think there's actually a line that I could have taken where I play around Hurkyl's Recall. And the line that I took while like I did play around Hurkyl's Recall all the way up to this point. At this point, if they had a Hurkyl's Recall, I could have gotten Recall. So yeah, I think I overthought the situation and should have just gone with Chump Block with Lodestone Golem, and make a 20-20 at end of turn and attack and kill my opponent, which was probably the best thing. Right. That's exactly what I'm saying. Is I don't think we could have beaten Hercule's Recall. I thought that I made a line that beat Hercule's Recall was super big brain, and it ended up just giving my opponent a couple free draw steps to find an answer. So yeah, that was an interesting game from that exact line perspective. Like I thought I had the hugest brain, and I thought I had the coolest line that like made it so I couldn't lose to Hercule's Recall. And in the end it was not correct, but we still end up getting there because we still end up beating Tinker Blightsteel, which I think is quite cool. And we did it in a very interesting way, but yeah. So that was a line that I definitely wanted to go over after yesterday, because like immediately after I took the line, I was like, I think I just overthought something way too hard and was just overthought it basically. It was just too big brained, and I thought it was so good when I was doing it. I was like, this is so genius. I'm like, I can't lose. I can play around Hercule's Recall, and then I got to this point on this turn, and it was like, oh, yeah, no, it wasn't actually good. But yeah, all right. That's a victorious attack, and so now I'm 3-0. I'm in a good position to top 8 here. It's not 100% locked, but with the number of 3-2s that make it into top 8 of these small tournaments, I'm pretty much in a very, very solid position. Any win in the next 2 rounds is going to lock me into top 8. So let's see what happens.